Hello, Ray. Good to see you, Ray.
Good evening, Father
Yeah,
John.
delighted to see you and delighted to be able to have this interview with you and Kathy as well. And Ray, so just to start off now, just a general question. Just maybe tell us a bit about yourself generally, and we will have other questions as well, Ray, obviously.
Well, generally, I've been living in Ireland for 22 years now with Catherine. Since meeting you, we have a routine every day. We start off with mass in the morning from one of our Franciscan friaries, and we close every day with evening prayers. So
That's lovely.
that's just to let you know that you did your job thoroughly
Thank
when you
you.
brought me into the Catholic Church.
Well, thanks, Ray. Thanks very much. Thank you. That's fantastic. So it is. Yeah. So now the next question, Ray, is: do you want to talk a bit about your younger years, your childhood, and your school days? And feel free to tell us.
Yeah,
Whatever.
well, I can just about remember.
Okay.
I was born on the 31st of August 1940, right in the middle of the start of the Battle of Britain.
Oh.
So I was actually born during an air raid
Oh my God.
in Gravesend Hospital.
Oh.
My father was Ernest Chuck. He was a customs officer. And my brother had been born 8 years earlier. He was 8 years older than me. And he was evacuated during the war to relatives in Chertsey. And I didn't see him for many, many years because he was, and he came home on his first visit home to find there was another baby in the house, so I don't know how he felt.
A big surprise for him, yeah. A big surprise. Yeah.
I did ask my mother and father at one stage how he came to know about me.
Oh.
And she said, well, I assume that his auntie told him.
Oh.
But anyway, I don't know. We got on all right over the many years that we knew one another, but we didn't know one another in the beginning.
I understand, yeah, you were
Yeah.
separated. Yeah. And school days, do you want to, anything about your school days?
Well, yeah, I went to, in 1945 I think it was, I went to primary school at Cecil Road in Gravesend.
Oh.
I was there until 1945.
Oh. Oh.
Sorry, no, I went there in 1945.
Okay.
And no, I was born in 1940, I'm wandering now. I went to school in 1945
Okay.
and they were happy days.
Yeah.
I did everything that all the other children did. I took the 11 plus examination, which I think you had something similar in Ireland,
Yeah.
in 1950, 51,
Okay. Yeah.
and I passed to go to the grammar school, Gravesend Grammar School,
Okay.
and I went there. Actually there's a website that I used to go to. I don't do now because I think most of my contemporaries have passed away.
Oh, I know.
But it was the class of 1951,
Oh, imagine. Yeah.
and I enjoyed my years there. I wasn't an academic, but I did enjoy woodwork,
Yes, I know.
which we'll talk about
We'll be
later
coming
on.
back to that again, of
But,
course. Yeah.
and later on, I had to make a decision about what employment I was going to take.
Yes,
And,
exactly, yeah.
My brother had already become a policeman in 1948, I think. He left school and joined as what they called a clerical assistant. He was a civilian,
Okay,
but he was only sort of 16, 17 years of age.
okay, okay.
So the first thing I wanted to do was to join the Forestry Commission, because I'd spent many years in doing scouting and that sort of thing, and working on forestry land and camping on forestry land. So
Okay.
I thought I'd like to go into the Forestry Commission as an
Okay.
employment, but it meant going to university, and
I know.
as I said, I'm not an academic,
I
so
understand.
I didn't want to do that. So
Okay.
my next step was to consider the police force and follow my brother.
Okay.
I did that, and I joined as a police cadet
Okay.
at the age of 16.
That was young, yeah.
But I was performing mainly civilian duties, office work and that sort of thing.
Oh, sort of mainly in an office.
But I got a good grounding into police work. And in 1959, I became the appropriate age to
Okay.
join the regular force.
Okay.
But just prior to that, national service had finished.
Okay.
I would have been the next intake for national service.
But it came.
So that I wasn't absolutely raw, the police force chose to send me on an outward bound mountaineering course to toughen me up in
Okay.
Cumberland.
Okay.
And I had a month there,
Oh.
came back thoroughly sore and covered in blisters, and I went to the number 6 District Police Training Centre at Sandgate, Folkestone,
Okay. That's Kent.
where, yes,
Kent, yeah. Okay.
where I did my 6 months service, and
Okay.
that was my certificate of service.
Oh, lovely. It's lovely to see
Um,
that, yeah.
So in all, I spent 9 years in the police force, 3 years as a cadet, 6 years as a regular constable,
Oh, very good. Very good.
and that's a picture of the passing out parade.
Oh, that's when you qualified, or that's
Yes,
you
when I
came?
qualified,
Oh, very good. Very good.
along with I think about 40 others, but they came from all different forces throughout the country.
Okay. Okay.
I was, at the end of my training, I was sent to Rochester in
Okay.
Kent,
Okay.
the Medway towns, as a beat officer, and I expected to do that for 2 years. Everybody had to do 2 years on the beat before
Okay.
they could
Okay.
specialise.
Okay.
But I think after 18 months, I was approached by the superintendent there, because I'd been a cadet and doing clerical duties,
Mhm.
to take on the prosecution
Okay.
of cases,
Okay.
the process.
The process, yeah. Okay.
And I said, well, I was prepared to do that as long, I wanted to be a traffic cop,
You like
like everybody else, I
Yeah,
suppose, go
yeah.
fast and tear about.
Yeah.
I said, providing that didn't interfere with any applications I made for traffic division, then I'd do
Okay.
it.
Okay.
And I have to be fair and honest, say that they were true to their word, and
Mm.
as soon as my transfer to traffic was announced, and there's a few pictures there,
Very good.
they allowed me to go.
That was great.
And I then served on motorcycles and driving cars. I took advanced driving tests for both motorcycles and cars,
Oh.
and I became a pursuit driver, I was able to chase people.
And did you do a certain amount of that? You did?
I did a fair amount,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Yeah.
But I did have an accident at the time, and I hurt my knee. But that's all part of the scene.
Of course.
But towards the end, in 1964, I got a slightly different idea of life, and I wanted to buy my own house.
Okay.
Because we were supplied with police rented accommodation.
Okay.
But I wanted to own my own because I could see the way that property was escalating in price.
Of course, yeah.
And I applied to do that, and I was refused. And that really was the reason for me coming out of the police force, because
I
I
can
didn't want to
understand.
be dictated
Yeah, I
to
can understand that.
on things as
Yeah.
necessary as that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I came out of the police force in 1965, and I'd sought employment with a local firm in Northfleet, Paper Sacks Limited,
Oh,
who manufactured sacks for fertiliser, sugar beet, all the other things, even Borden Mona,
oh, imagine.
which is an Irish company,
Irish
and
company, yeah.
Irish moss peat.
Yeah.
And I went there as an estimator, producing sales prices for the sales team. And after, about 2 years, I became manager of the estimating department. And the factory director asked me if I would like to go on a project
Oh,
of my own,
oh, very good.
which was seeking to reduce the amount of waste
Oh,
that was produced in the factory, because there were giant reels of paper that were put onto tubing machines to make into sacks,
yeah,
and even a split of an inch on the corner
yeah.
was amounted to nearly 60-something% of the total paper weight. So
Oh, right.
there was an awful amount of waste.
Obviously, yeah.
So I spent the next 2 years researching different ways of handling the paper, outlets to sell it to get the maximum price and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then again he called me back and said, would I like to extend my knowledge by becoming a work study engineer,
Okay.
which I said yes, as you would, and I joined the work study department. But fairly soon after I went there, I went on a course to Bristol to learn the techniques, and it was there while I was there that I contracted diabetes, so
Oh, dear.
it was quite a memorable event for me.
I know.
But I think it followed on from that I was given yet another project,
Oh,
and that involved visiting the potteries
oh,
to, what's the name of the company? Kathy?
Stoke-on-Trent?
Hmm?
Stoke-on-Trent?
Yeah, Stoke-on-Trent, but it was the
Wedgwood.
Wedgwoods.
Wedgwood, oh, they were famous.
They
yeah.
were
Famous, yeah.
suggesting a new technique which they had compiled called, do you know, it's so far back.
Oh,
Don't
worry,
Anyway.
don't worry.
Anyway, it was to learn all the different techniques about investigating and using the workforce to solve their own problems. Having come from
Yeah,
work study and
Yeah.
tried to tell everybody how they should do their job,
yeah.
we now got to a point which was sensible to involve the workplace to solve their own problems.
That's what I do in the parish group. I get all the parishioners to try and solve their own problems, and then I have an easier life then.
Yeah.
So
But-
the next,
Sorry.
sorry Ray, the next question I was going to touch on was the woodworking. I know you love woodworking. And I would love you to talk about that, because we've seen what you've done, and you've done stuff for us as well.
Well,
in the church
yeah,
and
I at my even at the earliest, when I first bought my own property with my first wife, who I have to say unfortunately died of cancer later on.
everything. Were you long married to the first wife? Was that a long period?
37 years.
It's quite a while. It's quite a period of time, yeah.
Yes, you don't get that long for.
No. Nowadays, it doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't happen anymore.
Oh
No,
dear.
No, it doesn't.
But no, I sort of started off. I went to we at school we did metalwork for a year, woodwork for a year,
Okay.
and then we were allowed to make a choice.
Between them.
And
yeah.
being lazy, basically,
Yeah.
I chose woodwork because it wasn't such hard work.
Yeah, that's nice.
But I came to really enjoy it, and I used to see the work of older pupils who were on the lathe and that sort of thing, and that's what I wanted to do.
You love that.
So I made a few pieces when I think I made a broom holder for my mother,
Oh, lovely.
and I made my brother's wedding present,
Oh, yeah.
a table, a coffee table for him.
And you
And
made
I had a little workshop at home,
Yeah, okay.
which I bought from my paper round money.
Oh,
I
very
bought a
good.
shed
Very good.
and gradually built up some tools. So,
You made a lot of clocks as well, Ray. I know that.
well, yes, that came a little bit later on
Yeah.
when I improved my workshop, and
Yeah.
I'd been married a few years, and clocks were a very interesting thing to me because I didn't have to make the mechanisms. You
No,
could buy the
you could buy
mechanisms,
that,
but
yeah.
I made the cases.
The cases.
And
Yeah.
you'll see examples in there. There's the granddaughter clock and the wall clock in the other room,
Yeah, the ground. Yeah.
which I made at different times. But I also started to practice woodcraft as a not only as a hobby but as a business on the side.
Okay.
And I used to make clocks for that. I think I made about 40 in all.
Oh, very good.
I can't remember all the people that had them.
Oh.
I hope they're still going.
I
don't
presume
know.
it would be, yeah.
Thomas Moran got one.
Yeah, Thomas Maron got one here, and the
Catherine Stenson.
Stensons have got one, and Kathy's got one because I gave that to her as a wedding present.
Oh,
when we-
lovely, lovely.
Anyway, in 1998, things changed for me because my wife died of bowel cancer.
God rest her. Yeah.
And I went back to what had happened. My niece had arranged, because I wasn't a regular churchgoer then, my niece had arranged with through her local church for the service and burial and so on and so forth. And I was very grateful to it was Church of England, the vicar there, for doing the work that he did. And I went back to church to search out my faith. I thought, now's the time I've got to think about life. I was a diabetic. I didn't know where my life would take me. And on the first day that I went there, who should be in the reception hall but Madam Kathy? And she greeted me and welcomed me to the church. I found out later on that she was a Catholic, but there wasn't a local Catholic church for her to go to. And you know as well as I do, Father John, that Anglican church is High Church, and
Close to us,
it's
yeah.
very, very close to
Yeah.
Catholicism.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, we got together and we enjoyed one another's company.
That's good.
I was served with a few impolite remarks in the first stages. I had a bucket of water thrown over me,
Oh,
yeah,
all right. Oh,
just to welcome me.
yeah. That'd be a very Irish thing, I think.
But in 1999, we decided that we would take the plunge. I mean, unfortunately, Kathy had lost her husband just at the same time that my wife had died. So
Okay.
we had something in common,
Absolutely,
which I like to think drew us together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, Kathy will claim that it was a calling from above,
I know.
that we decided after 2 years of marriage, we were in the kitchen one day, and she looked at me and said, I feel that the Lord's calling us to go somewhere else, to start a new life.
To move, yeah.
And of course I already knew about Kathy coming from Ireland to England, and on our honeymoon we came to Ireland on a coach
Oh,
for our honeymoon,
oh, very good.
without me knowing that she couldn't stand coach travel and she felt violently ill the whole time.
Oh, no.
But so I had an introduction to Ireland, and that's my only introduction. I had no previous knowledge of what it would be like here.
Okay.
And when Kathy felt this calling in the kitchen, we said, well, we'll look into it. And the question of coming to Ireland cropped up, and my nephew showed me how to get onto the internet, and Kathy had visions in her sleep about coming, and
Okay.
so we booked a trip to Ireland, and we had about 4 properties on the list. So we took a plane and came to Shannon, of all places, because we didn't even know there was an aerodrome at Knock.
I know.
We didn't know about it.
No,
And it's just across the road.
it's not far from
We
here.
can see it every day.
It's quite close by.
But we came here, and this was one of 3 or 4 houses that we got on the list, covering from here to Donegal.
Okay.
And I came here, and I don't know, I went down, and on the description there's a 10-acre forest
Okay.
down there.
Okay.
And since that linked back to my days when I wanted to join the Forestry Commission, so
Yeah,
I
of
thought,
course, yeah.
right,
Yeah.
in my dotage I can have a little bit of forest to look after.
That's it.
So I made the decision there and then, and with Kathy's agreement, that this would be the house we buy. It was the only one we went to. We never. I can't.
Remember Psalm 120, 21?
Oh yes, yeah. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
When I went down to the forest, I looked across and I could see the mountains of Sligo.
Oh, yeah.
And Kathy said to me, what does that remind you of? I said, Psalm 121. I lift up mine eyes to the Lord.
I lift up my eyes to the mountains and to the Lord. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was it. We moved in. We had a big dog with us. We had an Irish wolfhound, and that was a part of the consideration, that there was the land here, 10 acres for her to run around on,
We
and
needed that.
that
yeah.
was the ideal
Yeah.
sort of situation.
Mm.
But
The next question is, when you did come here with Kathy and that, you know, you also became involved with the church and you became a Catholic as well, so there's a whole story there
Oh,
as well.
there's a story there. Yes,
Yeah.
we started off, we were lay Franciscans
Okay.
with the Anglican Church.
Uh-huh.
And when we came here, we went to the Church of Ireland. And somehow I wasn't comfortable. I missed my Franciscan spirituality. And the vicar there was posted on another to another church in Dublin, and everything seemed to drop out of our spiritual life.
I know.
And I went to church in at Christmas 1991.
2004.
2004.
Yeah.
And we had to go all the way to Killala. It was the only midnight service.
It's a long way away, yeah.
And I felt absolutely dead by the time we got home, because I didn't know my way around the roads and what
Well,
have
it
you.
is a long way.
And
Absolutely.
I spoke to Thomas Maron, my neighbour, and he said, "Oh, I'll have a word with Father Dan
Yeah.
O'Macony." He said,
Yeah.
"Perhaps he'll let you come to church."
Yeah.
And he did that, and I went to Killala Church. Thoroughly enjoyed meeting some of the parishioners, who made me very welcome.
They would do it.
And Father Dan suggested that I become a regular churchgoer, and as a result of that,
Yeah.
your name cropped up.
That's right, because I was involved in RCIA.
Yeah,
That's right.
for the
That's how I
RCIA program
I'm
to become a
interested.
Catholic,
Yeah.
because the Anglican Church is so similar to Roman Catholicism. There's very, very little difference. But I came to you I think I travelled to Kilchimar for 2 years,
It was.
along with Maureen O'Boyle.
She was involved all the time, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and
And there were other people going to become
oh
Catholics
yes,
as
there
well.
were people
Yeah.
from all over the world, in
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
refugees and what have you.
Nigerians, all kinds. Yeah.
And I completed the course. I came back and I started to get involved in the church activities here. I went on to the first pastoral council
That's
as
right.
secretary.
You did indeed, yeah.
I got involved in making furniture, different bits of furniture
You
for
made
the
all
church.
crosses and different
2
things.
crosses,
Yeah.
the display lectern for the gospel book,
That's right.
the
Books,
choir,
the hymn books.
the hymn books,
Yeah, the press for the
cases and what have you, and the hymn number plaque.
The plaque, yeah.
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 So I started to get thoroughly involved, and then I don't know what year you came, but all of a sudden
2009. Yeah. Okay.
Father Dan
Yeah.
moved.
He disappeared.
He disappeared to Clunacool,
He did, yeah.
and who should arrive but Father John
That's right.
as our new priest.
That's right. Yeah.
And Kathy had something to go into the church magazine, a notice of some sort.
That was my
And
first. That was
she-
my first night there.
Yeah, your first night there, and she rang up the parochial house, and who should answer the phone but Father John.
And I was thinking, well, I won't know who this person is because I was completely new. And I says, what's the point answering the phone? I says, I won't even know who it is. And lo and behold, when I picked it up, it was Kathy Chubb.
That's it. Well, she
Yeah.
sat alongside me all through my learning days with you.
Yeah.
And,
Catechesis
So,
and that's right.
that sort of broke the ice, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, that was great for me and it was great for yourselves. It was great
And
for
then
both
that
of us.
Christmas,
Yeah.
I was brought into the Catholic Church
That's right.
by you
Yeah.
and Father Dan,
The two of us, yeah.
and
and we had a big party in the parochial house.
Yeah, I wouldn't
didn't know
mention
that.
too much about the party
No,
that
we
ensued
can't.
afterwards,
No, we
but
can't. No.
we did imbibe a little
We
bit.
did, yeah. I didn't realise I would be living in that house later on. I never knew that at the time.
No.
It's
But
funny.
anyway,
Yeah.
my life sort of sorted itself out from there,
Yeah.
and I became a regular member.
And a very important, very involved member, and you did a lot for the church. And we're very grateful. And the next question I want to ask you then is, Eamon Martin is a friend of mine, Archbishop Eamon Martin.
Yeah.
Came here and there was a meeting between you and him and something developed out of that. So maybe you'd like to talk about that, Ryan.
Yes, it goes back to you approached me one day and said that Eamon Martin, who'd been at theological college with you,
That's right.
was coming to the parish,
He was, yeah.
and could we do something to commemorate his visit?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that you really prompted it because you've been talking to me about did I play chess,
That's right.
and I thought about what we could do, and I thought about chess, and I decided, with your agreement, to create a 12-inch chess figure of a bishop,
That's right. That's right.
and to finish it off, I put a crozier in his hand.
That's right.
And
That's right.
we presented that to him.
That's right.
And at that presentation, you invited me back to the parochial house afterwards
That's
with
right.
Eamon Martin.
Yeah.
And Eamon Martin got me to one side and he said, could you make me a full-size crozier?
That's right.
Or something. I stepped back a little bit because it was something beyond my normal
Yeah.
activities.
Yeah, that's right.
And he'd explained to me that the one that he'd bought in Rome, that he used away from Armagh, fell on the floor one day,
That's right.
and because the hook,
The
crook,
Yeah.
fell on the floor, it snapped
Mm.
in half because it had been turned on a lathe, and that meant the grain of the wood went in one direction and it snapped on
It snapped in a
that
second.
direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I made one, but I turned it on the lathe. I didn't really listen, and I dropped it and it broke in half. So that led me to pursue other ways, and started to make a mould and made a steamer, and did it from bent wood,
Yeah. Okay.
which I formed around a former
Okay.
and turned the stem on the lathe, and that seemed to work quite well. But during the course of conversation with Eamon Martin, he's a dairyman, as
That's
you
right.
well know,
Yeah.
and the tree of Derry is the oak tree,
That's what the word dairy means.
Yeah,
The Irish
and
word
that's
oak.
why I made the crozier out of oak.
Oh.
And we finally, I mean, I didn't get it all together right because I had his coat of arms made in metal to put onto the crozier, but he wasn't keen on that. He fancied one that had been carved.
Out of wood, yeah.
And we spoke about it, and he really wanted some of the figures from Knock,
The Lamb of God.
the Lamb of God, and
Yeah.
so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
So I put several acorns onto the turned little acorns and put them on the crozier.
That's right.
And then on this block here, I carved the lamb. You may not see the detail there, but I carved the lamb and put some more acorns on, that satisfied him.
He was
You-
happy.
You will remember
Yes, we
we
went
drove up to
Vincent
Armagh.
Condon as well came with
Yeah.
us, I remember
And
that.
Vincent Conlon.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that so well.
But he
yeah.
wanted it painted, he said he wanted it painted, didn't he?
Yeah.
And you painted it blue. And then
Yeah.
we got up there and he said, no, I didn't want that. And I said, you mean you wanted it varnished? So he wanted it completely plain and varnished. And you had to go back all the way back up.
There was another journey again. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
about
that.
3 or 4 journeys.
There were journeys before.
Yeah, but we got there eventually, and
Yeah.
he was
And he's
Yeah.
happy to accept it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
that was that event.
That was a great event, really, because it was special, you know, for everybody.
Well, it was special for me. I mean, I'd never
Yeah.
attempted anything like that.
Yeah,
before.
yeah, and especially for him as well. Yeah, so it was.
Well, of course. I mean, he shortly after that he became the primate of all
He
Ireland.
did
so-
very shortly after that.
Yeah.
Very shortly after that. So Ray, we've had a fantastic interview, a really fantastic interview, and you sang in the choir. You both, yourself and Kathy, sang
Yeah.
in
And
the
the
choir.
and the cluster.
And the cluster choir, so that's something we can't really leave out, really, the choir. because
Well, I
music is so
thoroughly
beautiful.
enjoyed that
Yeah.
period of time.
Yeah.
I won't say I was a chorister,
Mm.
but Kathy trained me,
Of
as
course.
she's done in most things.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And
yeah.
Eventually, I think Father Dan was involved in the formation of the cluster choir.
I think so.
Yeah,
And,
when the
where
old
all,
kids
all the
together.
parishes came together,
Together, yeah.
and it was a way of meeting so many different people. It was
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
So, it has been a very interesting interview, sometimes, and a lot of stuff has been mentioned, and thanks for all that you've done for us in the parish.
Yeah, well, I'd like to add one further thing, and that's to say that, bearing in mind that I was a blow-in, I'm still a blow-in, really, I suppose. I can't get rid of my English accent.
No.
The people here have been absolutely fantastic. They've received both of us with open arms, and if it were, I'm just a little bit sad that this last 3 years with COVID and so on and so forth, and my subsequent diabetic problems, that I haven't been able to see them as often as I would have done.
Yeah, well,
But fortunately,
yeah.
Kathy's kept in contact.
Yeah.
She's been at church pretty well every day, I think.
Yeah, she's the ambassador, yeah.
Yeah.
She's the ambassador. And they always ask for you, Ray, always. Loads of people ask for you and how are you.
Well,
And they can all remember your first name, Ray, and then they say Ray, and we can't think of the second name, Ray. Or they Ray Chuck, oh, that's who it is.
no, they don't call me Ray
They
Chuck.
call you
They
Chuck.
call me Chuck.
Chuck is very
They think my
possible.
name is Charles.
Well, American, yeah, Chuck, yeah. That's true, that's true.
Yeah.
So, Ray, one final thing to add, if you had to give a piece of advice to somebody, or if you wanted to say something to someone in the parish listening to this, is there anything you'd
Well,
like to say?
the only thing I can say is that
Yeah,
after 22 years of living in rural Ireland,
okay,
I would not go back to England,
okay,
and I've thoroughly enjoyed every moment that I've been here,
that's great.
and I would like to consider myself to be an honorary Irishman.
Yeah, well, I think you are, and an honorary Colossal man too, Ray. I'm sure that Clonfinish man too, if not nothing else. So, look, thanks a million, and it's lovely to have all your reflections and memories, because the early part of the interview, things I didn't know about you, I heard, and later, of course, I knew
well,
some of the things.
You now have the ability to forget those fellows, John,
Well,
and
thanks.
just consider me here as an
Yeah.
Irishman.
Well, you are, as far as we're concerned, Ray, you are one of us, really, so thanks, and so is Kathy.
Thank you very much.
So really, I really appreciate it, and you put a lot of effort into it as well. So thanks a million, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, okay.